People often believe attraction begins the moment someone notices them. They think it starts with appearance, clever words, confidence tricks, or carefully rehearsed behaviors. But psychology tells a different story. Attraction begins long before another person enters your life. It begins in the private relationship you have with yourself. Every interaction you have with the world carries the invisible signature of your inner state. You cannot completely hide insecurity. You cannot permanently fake confidence. Human beings are remarkably skilled at sensing emotional reality, even when they cannot explain what they are feeling. The greatest misunderstanding about attraction is the belief that it is something you do. In reality, attraction is something you become. People who spend their lives trying to appear attractive usually create the opposite effect because every action is driven by one hidden message: please approve of me. And approval seeking has a strange psychological consequence. The harder you pursue it, the more valuable it appears to be, and the less valuable you appear in return. Think about how the human mind evaluates people. We naturally assign value to those who seem comfortable without our approval. This is not arrogance, it is emotional independence. There is an enormous difference between someone who rejects people out of pride and someone who simply refuses to let their self-worth depend on external validation. One creates distance through ego, the other creates attraction through inner stability. This is because the human brain is constantly searching for emotional certainty. We are drawn toward people who appear grounded, who remain calm under pressure, who do not panic when ignored, and who do not reshape their personality to fit every room they enter. Their consistency becomes magnetic because it signals strength. Stability has always been attractive because, on a subconscious level, it represents safety. Notice how often people sacrifice themselves in the hope of becoming more attractive. They over-explain. They over-text. They laugh louder than they feel. They agree with opinions they secretly dislike. They become experts at reading everyone else's emotions while completely ignoring their own. Gradually, they disappear behind a version of themselves designed to earn acceptance. Ironically, this pursuit rarely creates genuine connection. It creates temporary approval, but approval is fragile. The moment you stop performing, it disappears. Authentic attraction, however, survives because it is rooted in something deeper than performance. It is rooted in identity. Identity is perhaps the most underestimated force in human psychology. Every decision you make reinforces the story you tell yourself about who you are. If your story depends entirely on other people's opinions, then every rejection becomes a personal crisis. Every unanswered message feels like proof that you are inadequate. Every criticism shakes your foundation because you have built your identity on unstable ground. But when your identity comes from your values, your discipline, your purpose, and your commitment to growth, something remarkable happens. Other people's opinions begin to lose their power over you. You no longer enter conversations hoping to be chosen. You enter them prepared to discover whether the connection genuinely deserves your time. That subtle shift changes everything. Psychologists often describe confidence as certainty in one's abilities, but perhaps real confidence is something even simpler. It is the ability to remain yourself regardless of the outcome. Whether someone admires you or ignores you, whether they stay or leave, your sense of self remains intact. This emotional resilience communicates strength without saying a single word. There is another principle operating beneath the surface: scarcity. People instinctively value what is not endlessly available. This principle influences economics, relationships, leadership, and social dynamics alike. Yet many misunderstand it. Scarcity does not mean pretending to be unavailable or playing manipulative games. Manufactured distance eventually feels dishonest. Genuine scarcity comes from having a meaningful life that cannot revolve around one person's attention. Imagine two individuals. One waits anxiously for every notification, rearranges their schedule to please others, and measures each day by how much attention they receive. The other is deeply invested in personal goals, learning new skills, building meaningful relationships, and pursuing work that matters. They respond thoughtfully rather than instantly because their life already contains purpose, who naturally appears more attractive. Not because they are trying to create mystery, but because they have something infinitely more compelling than mystery. They have direction. Purpose is one of the strongest psychological signals of attractiveness because it communicates that your life has momentum. Human beings are instinctively drawn toward movement. We admire people who are building something larger than themselves because they remind us of our own unrealized potential. This is why chasing people often weakens attraction. Every desperate pursuit silently communicates that another person's attention has become your primary purpose. And when someone becomes your purpose, you unintentionally surrender your power. You begin negotiating against yourself. You tolerate disrespect you would normally reject. You abandon your standards in exchange for temporary affection. True attraction cannot grow in an environment where self-respect is constantly sacrificed. The paradox is fascinating. The less you need validation, the more freely you can offer genuine appreciation. You compliment without manipulation. You listen without trying to impress. You express interest without fear of rejection because your emotional stability does not depend on the response. People feel this difference. They experience your presence as calm rather than demanding, curious rather than needy, confident rather than performative, and this emotional atmosphere is surprisingly rare in a world where so many interactions are driven by hidden expectations. Remember, effortless attraction does not mean making no effort. It means directing your effort toward the only place where lasting influence begins, your own character. Instead of obsessing over how to make people like you, become someone you genuinely respect. Build habits that make you proud when no one is watching. Develop discipline that survives failure. Create a life so rich in meaning that relationships become a valuable addition to your journey, not the foundation of your identity. Because the most attractive people are rarely those trying hardest to attract anyone. They are the ones quietly becoming more capable, more disciplined, more emotionally balanced, and more purposeful every single day. And once you understand this, attraction stops feeling like a game you must win. It becomes the natural consequence of becoming someone whose presence reflects inner abundance instead of inner scarcity. So before you ask why people aren't drawn to you, ask a deeper question. Asterisk asterisk, does the life you're building make you someone you would be drawn to? Asterisk asterisk, the answer to that question will shape every relationship that follows. Once you begin building that inner abundance, something subtle starts to change. You no longer feel compelled to convince people of your worth because your actions begin to speak before your words ever do. This is where effortless attraction moves into its next stage. It is no longer about what you think of yourself alone. It becomes about the silent signals you send to everyone around you. Most people believe attraction is created through conversation, charm, or carefully chosen compliments. But long before a single sentence is spoken, the human mind has already begun making judgments. We are constantly reading one another, often without realizing it. Every pause, every glance, every shift in posture, every emotional reaction becomes information. The conscious mind hears words, but the subconscious mind watches behavior. And behavior is far more difficult to fake. This explains why some people can walk into a room and immediately command attention without demanding it. They are not necessarily the loudest, the most physically attractive, or the most entertaining. Their presence carries a quiet certainty. They seem comfortable with silence. They are not rushing to prove themselves. They observe before they react. That calmness creates curiosity, and curiosity is one of the strongest foundations of attraction. Think about how rare genuine composure has become. We live in a culture that rewards immediate reactions. Every notification demands an instant response. Every disagreement encourages emotional outrage. Every moment of silence is filled with noise. Yet the people who leave the deepest impression are often those who resist this constant urgency. They pause before speaking, they think before reacting, they choose their words carefully because they understand that not every thought deserves expression. Silence, when used with confidence, becomes a form of communication. It is not awkwardness, it is restraint. And restraint has always carried psychological weight. When someone feels the need to fill every quiet moment with words, they often reveal anxiety rather than confidence. They fear that silence will make them appear uninteresting. Ironically, the opposite is usually true. A person who is comfortable with silence communicates that they do not depend on constant approval to feel secure. Their quietness invites others to lean in rather than tune out. There is another reason silence is so powerful. Human beings are naturally curious creatures. We are drawn toward what we cannot immediately understand. When every opinion, every emotion, and every plan is revealed instantly, there is little left for the imagination. But when someone reveals themselves gradually, allowing their character to unfold over time, they create a sense of discovery. People remember experiences that invite participation far more than experiences that reveal everything at once. This does not mean becoming secretive or emotionally distant. It means understanding the value of emotional pacing. Trust grows in layers, not in emotional floods. The strongest connections are built through consistency, not oversharing. Another silent signal that shapes attraction is emotional control. This is frequently misunderstood. Emotional control does not mean suppressing emotions or pretending not to care. It means refusing to let temporary emotions dictate permanent decisions. Imagine two people facing criticism. One immediately becomes defensive, raises their voice, and begins arguing. The other listens carefully, considers the criticism, responds thoughtfully if necessary, and remains composed regardless of the outcome. Which person appears stronger? The answer is obvious because strength is not measured by intensity. It is measured by stability. The human mind instinctively trusts people who appear capable of managing themselves. Leadership, influence, and attraction all begin with self-mastery. If your emotions control you, other people quickly recognize it. They learn exactly which buttons to press. But when your emotions become information rather than commands, you become far more difficult to manipulate. This is why patience often creates more influence than speed. Emotional reactions are predictable. Emotional discipline is unforgettable. Body language also speaks long before your voice enters the conversation. Confidence is rarely found in exaggerated gestures or dominant poses. Genuine confidence appears relaxed. There is no unnecessary tension. Eye contact feels natural rather than forced. Movements are deliberate instead of rushed. The body reflects the state of the mind. People often spend years searching for techniques to appear more confident while ignoring the source of confidence itself. Your body cannot permanently convince others of something your mind does not believe. Temporary tricks eventually collapse under pressure. Authentic confidence grows from repeated experiences of keeping promises to yourself. Each disciplined action strengthens your internal identity. Every difficult conversation you face instead of avoiding it, every commitment you honor, every challenge you endure without quitting. These experiences slowly reshape your posture, your voice, and your presence because they reshape your beliefs about yourself. This is why true confidence cannot be purchased, borrowed, or imitated. It must be earned. There is also tremendous power in emotional consistency. Many people become attractive only when circumstances favor them. They are confident when praised, generous when appreciated, and calm when everything goes according to plan. But genuine presence reveals itself under pressure. Observe how someone behaves when they experience disappointment, rejection, or uncertainty. That moment reveals far more than their successes ever could. Anyone can appear confident during comfort. Very few remain composed during chaos. People remember emotional stability because it creates trust. Trust is the invisible bridge between admiration and attraction. One final silent signal deserves attention, selective attention. In a world obsessed with being noticed, many people believe attraction comes from giving everyone equal access to their time and energy. But attention is one of the most valuable resources you possess. When you give it away carelessly, it loses significance. When you offer it intentionally, it becomes meaningful. This is not about playing games or pretending to be unavailable. It is about respecting your own time enough to invest it wisely. Listen deeply when someone has earned your attention. Be fully present rather than constantly distracted. The quality of your attention matters far more than the quantity you distribute. People rarely remember those who talk the most. They remember those who made them feel genuinely seen. Ironically, this requires speaking less and observing more. As you continue your journey, remember that attraction is rarely created through dramatic gestures. It is built through hundreds of quiet moments that reveal character. The way you carry yourself when no one is applauding. The way you respond when life becomes difficult. The patience you show before speaking. The discipline you demonstrate when emotions tempt you toward impulsive decisions. These invisible habits become visible over time. They shape your reputation, your relationships, and ultimately your influence. Because in the end, people may forget your words, but they never forget the feeling your presence leaves behind. Master your presence, and your silence will begin speaking louder than your voice ever could. If you followed this journey from the beginning, you've probably noticed a pattern. Effortless attraction is not built on clever techniques. It begins with inner abundance, grows through silent signals of confidence, and ultimately reaches its highest form when your entire life becomes your message. At this stage, you no longer wonder how to attract people. You begin asking a far more powerful question. How do I become someone whose presence naturally leaves a lasting impression? This is the hidden difference between temporary attention and lasting influence. Attention can be demanded. Influence cannot. Attention is often loud, immediate, and short-lived. Influence is quiet, gradual, and unforgettable. Look closely at the people who remain in your memory years after meeting them. Chances are they were not constantly trying to entertain everyone in the room. They did not seek approval every few minutes. They possessed something much rarer. They had direction. Their lives were moving towards something meaningful, and because of that, every conversation with them carried weight. Purpose has a strange psychological effect. It changes the way people perceive you before you even realize it has happened. When your energy is invested in building something larger than yourself, whether it is your work, your discipline, your knowledge, your family, or your personal mission, you stop chasing attention because your attention already has somewhere valuable to go. Human beings instinctively notice people whose lives have momentum. We are drawn toward movement because movement represents growth. Stagnation, on the other hand, quietly repels. Someone who spends every day becoming a little wiser, healthier, stronger, or more capable develops a presence that cannot be manufactured. Their confidence is no longer based on compliments. It is based on evidence. Every disciplined action reinforces the belief that they can rely on themselves. This is why self-improvement should never be confused with self-obsession. One seeks perfection, the other seeks progress. Perfection is impossible, but progress is available every day. Ironically, people are not inspired by flawless individuals. They are inspired by those who continue evolving despite their imperfections. Growth creates energy. Energy creates presence. There is another truth that many people resist because it feels uncomfortable. Attraction often increases when your happiness no longer depends on being noticed. This seems almost unfair, yet psychology repeatedly reveals the same principle. The more desperately someone needs attention, the less meaningful their attention appears. But when someone gives attention freely, without expectation or hidden demands, it feels authentic. This is where many people unintentionally sabotage themselves. They build their entire identity around being liked. They monitor every reaction, analyze every message, and constantly adjust themselves to fit other people's expectations. Over time, they lose the very quality that makes anyone memorable: authenticity. Authenticity is not saying whatever comes to your mind. It is living in alignment with your values even when doing so costs you approval. That kind of consistency is magnetic because it is rare. Most people change depending on who is watching. They become more confident around some people and smaller around others. They become agreeable to avoid conflict and silent to avoid rejection. Eventually, no one knows who they truly are, including themselves. The people who leave lasting impressions refuse to play that game. They know exactly what they stand for. Their values remain stable regardless of the audience. This consistency creates trust because people never have to guess which version of them will appear tomorrow. Trust, more than charm, creates lasting attraction. Another overlooked principle is the intelligent use of absence. We often assume influence comes from constant visibility, constant messaging, constant availability. But think about the people whose presence you genuinely value. It is not because they are always there. It is because when they are present, they bring something meaningful. Scarcity creates appreciation when it occurs naturally. If your life is filled with purpose, responsibilities, learning, meaningful relationships, and personal goals, you simply cannot be available every moment. Not because you are trying to appear mysterious, but because your life demands your participation. This natural balance changes the psychology of your relationships. Instead of asking, "Will they notice me?" people begin wondering, "When will I see them again?" Curiosity replaces certainty, and curiosity keeps emotional investment alive. But there is an important distinction here. Never create artificial distance to manipulate people. Manipulation may create temporary fascination, but it destroys trust once discovered. Genuine attraction is sustainable because it grows from reality, not performance. Perhaps the greatest lesson of all is understanding emotional impact. Years from now, people are unlikely to remember every conversation they had with you. They will remember how they felt after leaving your presence. Did they feel understood, inspired, respected, calm, challenged to become better? Your emotional impact becomes your legacy. This is why listening is often more influential than speaking. When you genuinely listen, people experience something increasingly rare. They feel seen rather than evaluated. They feel heard rather than interrupted. In a world where everyone is waiting for their turn to speak, the person who truly listens quietly becomes unforgettable. Presence is not measured by the number of words you say. It is measured by the depth of attention you give. And attention itself is becoming one of the rarest forms of generosity. Every distraction weakens relationships. Every moment of genuine presence strengthens them. As your life develops, continue investing in qualities that no trend can replace. Build discipline because discipline creates freedom. Develop patience because patience reveals wisdom. Protect your integrity because reputation follows character. Strengthen your mind because circumstances will always change, but your principles can remain steady. The remarkable truth is that none of these qualities were designed to make you attractive. They were designed to make you stronger. Attraction simply becomes the natural consequence. This is the paradox that so many people spend years trying to understand. The people who appear effortlessly magnetic are usually the ones least obsessed with appearing magnetic. Their focus is directed inward toward growth and outward toward purpose. Relationships become an extension of the life they have built, not a substitute for the life they have neglected. Imagine waking each morning with goals that excite you, habits that strengthen you, work that challenges you, and values that guide every decision. Imagine becoming so invested in your own evolution that rejection no longer defines you, praise no longer controls you, and comparison no longer distracts you. At that point, attraction ceases to be a strategy. It becomes a reflection of who you have become, because people are ultimately drawn toward those who remind them of their highest potential. Your confidence gives them permission to believe in themselves. Your discipline challenges their excuses. Your calmness steadies their chaos. Your purpose awakens their own forgotten ambitions. That is influence. That is presence. That is effortless attraction. So as you leave here today, stop asking how to make people notice you. Instead, dedicate yourself to becoming someone whose character, purpose, and quiet confidence are impossible to ignore. ***, when you become the architect of your own life, you no longer chase admiration. Your life itself becomes the reason people are drawn to you. ***,